Welcome back to the Lights Out podcast. We have a lot to talk about as this is the first episode of April 2026. You'll notice that my co host, Ant, aka Heel Synergy, is not here today. Unfortunately, he will be out for a few weeks recovering from an eye surgery. So, thoughts and prayers go out to Ant, and the show must go on. It is our first show in April, so we have the April matchups of the month to talk about. Before we actually get into it, we actually had a couple of interesting absences from the April matchups of the month, brought to you by Ring Magazine. As usually, when Zuffa Boxing puts on a show, one of those fights ends up on the monthly matchups list. That didn't happen this month. And the PBC was also excluded, even though they have had a show this past Saturday. So I do want to give both of those shows justice. I think the PBC and Zuffa Boxing are entertaining outlets for the sport. We will talk about this PBC show before we get into the April matchups of the month, and then we will get into Zuffa in just a bit. So before we get into the April matchups, on the 4th of April, Saturday night, we saw Tim Tszyu defeat Dennis Nordia by decision for the WBO International Middleweight title. And this was a PBC show, but it was not a pay-per-view. You were able to stream it off of Amazon Prime. This was really a tune-up fight for Tim Tszyu, who looks to go on to bigger and better things in late 2026. So we will see more from Tim Tszyu before the end of the year, and that's that. Let's get into the April matchups of the month, which highlights a new fifth home for boxing. On one of the previous episodes, Ant and I established that boxing has four homes in the modern era. The first one is DAZN, which of course has four of the five major promotions in the world, being Top Rank, they recently acquired, Golden Boy, Queensberry, and Matchroom. The fifth and only major promotion that is not a part of DAZN is the PBC, which we just talked about, which is available to watch on Amazon Prime. So those are two homes, right? DAZN and Amazon Prime. And the other two homes are Netflix, which is still looking to have boxing events, right? They have Fury versus Makhmadov coming up. We will talk about that in this episode as well. And then, of course, Paramount Plus, the home of Zuffa Boxing, is the fourth home of boxing. So you got DAZN, Prime Video, Netflix, and Paramount Plus, the four homes of boxing. But wait, there's more. We have just established ESPN once again hosting boxing in a different way. I know ESPN used to host Top Rank events. They are not doing that anymore. Top Rank, as previously stated, has recently signed with DAZN. But ESPN will feature events from Most Valuable Promotions. Now, Most Valuable Promotions is the events that put on those Netflix Jake Paul fights that, us realists, us purists kind of considered a joke to boxing. Let's keep it real here. Most Valuable Promotions does not seem to be headlining Jake Paul as a main event on Netflix anymore. They seem to be with ESPN. Jake Paul is a major promoter, a major player in the promotion. And this promotion looks to focus and specialize on women's boxing, which, with the right pockets, is seemingly going to be successful, right? Women's boxing isn't exactly in the state that men's boxing is. You have a lot more undisputed champions. You have a lot less politics. You have a lot less ducking. Don't get me wrong. There is some of that stuff going on, but it's a lot more streamlined than men's boxing. And Most Valuable Promotions seems to be in a good position to establish ESPN as the fifth home of boxing in this new era. And we were able to see MVP's inaugural event, Most Valuable Promotions inaugural event for women's boxing. Before we get there, we did see Lauren Price defeat Stephanie Pinheiro by decision to retain the Ring WBA, WBC, and IBF welterweight championship. This was on DAZN. This took place on Saturday, the 4th of April. On the 5th of April, Easter, we saw Most Valuable Promotions 1. which saw Ellie Scotney defeat the number 3 junior featherweight in the world, Mayeli Flores Rasquero, by decision to retain the undisputed junior featherweight championship. This was the co-main event of MVP 1. And the main event of MVP 1 was Carolina Dubois defeating the number 3 lightweight in the world, Terry Harper, to retain the Ring, WBC, and WBO lightweight championship. Very good main event here for MVP 1. Very good co-main event here for MVP 1. I don't see MVP, Most Valuable Promotions, having any issues dominating the women's boxing scene. That will be the undisputed home of women's boxing, in my opinion, sooner rather than later, if it's not already the case. We will see more from Most Valuable Promotions this month on this very Matchups of the Month list for April. Before we get back to them, let's go ahead and talk about what's taking place on the 11th of April as Tenshin Nasukawa will take on Juan Francisco Estrada for the WBC Bantamweight title eliminator. Not for the title, but just an eliminator fight. My fault. And then we will see more from MVP with MVP 2 as Alicia Baumgardner will take on Bomi Reshin, defending the Ring, WBA, WBO, and IBF Junior Lightweight Championship in the co-main, and the main event of MVP 2 will be Shadeja Green taking on the number 3 super middleweight in the world, Laney Daniels, defending the Ring, WBO, and IBF super middleweight championship. Very interesting. Looks like we have, again, our 5th home of boxing on ESPN featuring MVP, Most Valuable Promotions, the undisputed home of women's boxing. So, yeah, man, this boxing scene continues to evolve, and I'm having fun with it. It's all really good. We're all getting really good products here. Let's continue here with 2 more fights on the April matchups of the month. One of these fights, unfortunately, has been canceled just hours before this recording. This fight was to take place on the 18th of April. Number 3, Callum Smith versus number 6, David Morrell for the WBO interim light heavyweight title has unfortunately been canceled due to injury. Very unfortunate there. And we have one more fight on the April matchups of the month. As on the 25th of April, Tony Yoka will face the number 10 heavyweight in the world, Lawrence Okoli, for the WBC silver heavyweight title. Good stuff here from the April matchups of the month. I definitely think May, June, and July will be much more entertaining. I can understand if you're disappointed by the April matchups of the month, especially with arguably the best fight on there getting canceled between Callum Smith and David Morrell. But nonetheless, we did have some pretty huge boxing premium shows that took place this past weekend, and we have some big shows looming this upcoming weekend. So we will definitely get into those. Let's go ahead and review this past weekend in the world of boxing, as on the 4th of April, we were able to see a collaborative show between Queensberry and MF Pro. Main event was Derek Chisora. I don't know why I'm fumbling my words today. It's a Monday, I guess. Derek Chisora taking on Deontay Wilder in what would be Derek Chisora's last match. Hard for me to say. Deontay Wilder did get the defeat, or the victory, goodness gracious, by decision here against Derek Chisora. And this was, other than it being 2 old guys in here, 40 years old in the world of boxing is considered old, all right? In regular life, I wouldn't consider 40 years old very old at all, but in the world of boxing, yeah, you're an old guy if you're in your 40s still doing this. And both of these guys, let's just say these guys had trouble staying on their feet. And it wasn't from power punches that they were getting knocked off their feet. They were just falling and slipping constantly. Derek Chisora fell out of the ring twice, which he believes is the reason that he lost this fight against Deontay Wilder. This was on the April matchups of the month, and honestly, this was an entertaining fight if you take into account that these guys are fairly old and we're doing some old man stuff in this ring. I'm not even trying to diss. I enjoyed this fight. It's just, I gotta say it, man. It didn't look like prime Deontay Wilder. It did not look like prime Derek Chisora. But it was a fun fight. This undercard had some good stuff too, as the co-main had the number 9 cruiserweight in the world, Vidal Riley, defeating Mateos Masternak by decision to win the European cruiserweight title. And then we also saw Denzel Bentley defeat Endry Saavedra for the WBO interim middleweight title. And then the first two opening bouts saw Matty Harris defeat Franklin Ignatius by KO and Amir Anderson defeat Jordan Dujon by TKO. So we open up the main card with two finishes. Everything else really goes to the decision, and the main event is really fun. It's always a blessing to see Deontay Wilder. It's always a blessing to see Derek Chisora. It's even more awesome to see them fight each other. I was very excited for this fight. It's been a while since we've seen Deontay Wilder, who I'm personally a huge fan of, as you can imagine. And this was a close fight, man. This was a close fight. I do think Derek Chisora very much could have won this fight if he didn't fall out of the ring a second time. He was actually knocked out of the ring once, but the second time, I don't know what happened. He just kind of fell out. Like I said, old man stuff. And I know that sounds very negative, but I mean that in the most objective way possible. It wasn't that bad. All right. Now we get into Zuffa Boxing 5, which took place on the 5th of April, Easter Sunday. Good way to end the day. Good fun on the main card of Zuffa 5 as we see two lightweight true contenders emerge through the co-main and main event. The main event saw Andres Cortez defeat Erickson Garcia by decision, and the co-main saw Mark Magsayo defeat Firgo McCrory by TKO. Andres Cortez and Mark Magsayo are now two lightweights that we could see climbing the ranks and potentially one day fighting for the Zuffa lightweight championship. I don't know when that's going to happen. We only have one champion crowned in Zuffa, and that is their cruiserweight champion, Jai Opataya. But I'm sure these names will be in the conversation when it's time to book a lightweight championship fight in Zuffa Boxing. The opening fight was Crazy A, Azat Hovhannisyan, defeating Eduardo Baez by decision in a featherweight bout. Now, this bout between Baez and Crazy A could have gone either way, but Crazy A gets the nod here. And after the fight, Crazy A states that if he's not fighting for the Zuffa Featherweight Championship when the time comes around, then he will, in fact, retire. Now, this is probably the result of, being on the high of fighting a 10-round boxing match. Do I think Crazy A is going to retire? No, I understand he's not a young spring chicken anymore, but I don't think he's going to retire. And I do think that he has a good argument in terms of him fighting for the inaugural Zuffa Lightweight Championship. But there's a better way to do it. He totally came off of this being like, if I don't fight for the Zuffa featherweight title in my next bout, I will retire, which probably makes the officials at Zuffa Boxing not want to give him the title fight that he claims he deserves. And I don't disagree in the fact that he deserves it. I think he does. It's just one of those things where it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And ultimately, I don't even know if Crazy A won this fight for sure. I thought Eduardo Baez did just enough to potentially win the fight. I would actually like to see these two featherweights run it back at some point because I think they have unfinished business. I think Crazy A's decision going over from the judges' scorecards is absolutely in question. And that's not really something I say on this show very often. Most of the time, I take a deep analysis on the decision, and more often than not, almost 95% of the time, I say the judges made the right decision. I'm not saying the judges didn't make the right decision. I'm just not confident in their decision going with Crazy A as the winner here. Nonetheless, man, like I said, man, I would really love to see Crazy A and Eduardo Baez run it back at some point. I think there's some unfinished business here. I'm reluctant to be confident in Zuffa booking this fight again, but I would like to see it. I would like to see it for sure. That was Zuffa 5, man. Zuffa 5 showed us two good lightweights that have the potential to be a future champion in the promotion. And it was fun. It was okay. It was all right. It's fair to say it was one of the weaker shows that Zuffa has put on so far. But even then, I was greatly entertained. I love their pacing. I love the way they approach a boxing show. It's very entertaining. It doesn't keep the viewer waiting around for too long. It's very simple in how they introduce their fighters. Yes, it is a blank canvas right now. There's still a lot of work to be done in terms of establishing Zuffa as a premier boxing promotion. But I like the way they do things. I think their philosophy, I do think them taking the good things from UFC can work, honestly. I think Zuffa does a lot of things better than the UFC does right now as far as 2026 goes. I have hope, right? We've hit a couple roadblocks with Zuffa. The sanctioning bodies are trying to blacklist any fighters that are already established in boxing from going over there. But ultimately, I think these roadblocks will clear up or Zuffa will evolve to continue featuring young talent, continue to feature good fights and good matchmaking. We actually know the full main card for Zuffa 6 that will be coming next month in May. That will see Shane Mosley Jr. take on Serhii Bohachuk in the main event. The co-main will see the return of Julian Rodriguez as he will be taking on an undefeated welterweight by the name of James Pereira. And in the opening bout, we have Misael Rodriguez making his return against Andreas Katsourakis in a middleweight bout. So we have a opening middleweight bout with two undefeated fighters, the returning Misael being one of them. We have Julian Rodriguez, the first ever main card Zuffa fighter, returning in a welterweight bout against the undefeated James Pereira. And then in the main event, again, we have Shane Mosley Jr. taking on the returning Serhii Bohachuk in the main event. We in every fight of the main card of Zuffa 6, we have a returning boxer from either Zuffa 1 or Zuffa 2. And I think that's what's really going to make a big difference in Zuffa 6 next month. I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to see Shane Mosley versus Serhii Bohachuk. This is a huge fight that will be fantastic. I've been wanting to see what's next for Julian Rodriguez. They have a fantastic opponent for him, an undefeated welterweight opponent. That's going to be huge. And then they have a fantastic opponent for Misael too. So we're going to see which returning fighter gets a second win on a Zuffa main card here. And I imagine one of these three guys will be the first ever two-time Zuffa main card winner. And that will put them that much closer to fighting for a title when that time comes. All right. Let's get into the fights that have been announced since we last spoke. We have 3 fights here, a couple of them in May, one in June, and one in July. So we recently got the announcement that Dimitri Bivol will be defending the ring WBA, WBO, and IBF light heavyweight championship against Michael Eifert on May 30th. On May 30th as well, we have Oshaki Foster taking on Raymond Ford for the WBC junior middleweight title. We have Keyshawn Davis taking on Nair Albright in a rematch at the junior welterweight level on May 16th. Keyshawn Davis defeated Albright, but the win was nullified due to a negative test for marijuana. I'm not even going to get into that. So they'll be running it back for a second fight. This was a really good fight earlier in January, and I'm looking forward to the second fight, barring the nonsense of Keyshawn Davis getting his win nullified from January. And then in June, we have, this is the big one, fellas, Xander Zayas taking on Boots Ennis for the WBA and WBO Junior Middleweight Championship. This is taking place on June 27th. These two guys are both top 5 junior middleweights. I look forward to seeing them clash. And then on July 4th, we will have Jula Mason defending the WBO lightweight title against Joe Cardina. Good fights announced. It should be a fun summer for boxing. And before we get out of here, we have 2 more shows to go over. We have 2 shows taking place this Saturday, the 11th of April, that should have your attention. The first one will take place on Netflix. It is Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Makhmadov. The return of Tyson Fury, which will be a fantastic heavyweight fight. I'm sure he'll get the win here. I'm sure Makhmadov will get some offense in and make it close nonetheless. The co-main event, in my opinion, is just as exciting, as Conor Benn will be facing Regis Prograis at the weight of 150, closest to a super welterweight, if you will, junior middleweight. And then we also have 2 other heavyweight fights on the main card, as Jimmy Shikeva will defend the British heavyweight title against Richard Piakpore. And to open up the show, Fraser Clark will face Justice Hooney in a heavyweight bout. Should be a fun show. This is Netflix's first boxing event of 2026, and I'm sure it will have all the bells and whistles as they usually do. And then later that day, the 11th of April, we have UFC 327, where the main event will see a fight, a light heavyweight bout for the vacant light heavyweight championship of UFC. This will see Jiri Prochaska take on Carlos Ulberg. And the co-main will be Joshua Van defending the UFC flyweight championship against the number 4 flyweight in the world, Tatsuro Taira. And we also get on the main card Curtis Blades taking on Josh Hokett in a heavyweight bout. The number 10 light heavyweight in the world taking on the number 12 light heavyweight in the world, as Dominic Reyes takes on Johnny Walker. And opening up the main card, we have another light heavyweight bout, number 6, Azamat Morzakhanov taking on number 13, Paulo Costa. This will be another good showing by UFC. We know what we get with UFC. They have established themselves as pretty much the one and only MMA promotion in the world. I understand the PFL has ties with ESPN. I don't think the PFL is quite there yet. And then we know that Most Valuable Promotions next month in May does have Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. We will see what that looks like for the world of MMA. But nonetheless, guys, we got Fury versus Makhmadov this Saturday, and then UFC 327 following that up. We also have, as previously stated, a pretty interesting April matchups of the month list brought to you by Ring Magazine that clearly establishes ESPN as the 5th home of boxing, as ESPN will host Most Valuable Promotions, which looks to dominate the women's boxing scene and give us a streamlined show to showcase women's boxing in all its glory in ways that men's boxing could never, really. So, yeah, fun stuff. Very fun to see Chisora versus Wilder. Zuffa 5 did its thing. Zuffa 6 is looking fun. I'm sure we'll talk about that again in a couple of weeks. And this has been the Lights Out Podcast. Talk to you soon. See you next week after UFC 327 and Fury versus Makhmadov takes place on Netflix. All right. Be good, everyone. Talk to you soon.